finish to the Cambridge game. I guess you haven't had to make too many saves in your career from your opposing number.
No, I think that's probably the first, to be honest. It was a good header. To be fair, I was a little bit prepared for it because one of my friends the other day scored a absolute worldie for Sunderland in a similar way. So I was half expecting him to get his head on it, but luckily it was relatively easy and saved my blushes.
I mean, is there almost a little bit more determination not to be beaten by your opposite number?
Yeah, I don't think I'd have lived it down, to be honest. It would have been obviously the disappointment of conceding late and then the added rubbing salt in the wounds of the opposite number getting one past me.
I suppose the good news though, Forest Green obviously still found a way to win that game. What do you feel has been behind that improvement of late?
I wouldn't even say really it's an improvement. I think the foundations have always been there, but just sticking together and sticking to the plan. I think the last few weeks especially, I'd say the last 3-4 games we've really done that, and we're doing it more consistently as well now, which I think is obviously benefiting us massively.
And how much of that has coincided with Jordan Moore-Taylor's return to fitness again?
Yeah, we always obviously when Geordie plays we know how we kind of set up and where we go with that because we've played together as a back, kind of me and him and a couple of the other boys, Dom, Bales and Dokes as well. We had a good relationship last year when we were playing a lot of games together, so it always makes it obviously better. But the lads that have come in, whether that's on the left, on the right, wherever that is, have all done solid jobs. So I think the competition for places is really good in that position at the moment.
Yeah, and when a youngster like Harvey Bunker comes in as he's done, how impressive has he been? Because your perspective is totally different to everyone else's. Yeah,
you see it day in, day out with Bunks. Even last year, he came on leaps and bounds. Physically, he's a specimen as well, which obviously helps in his position. But he's a great lad. His attitude's on point every single day, so he deserves all the plaudits he gets.
And this weekend, obviously, it's Cheltenham, it's the All Gloucestershire derby. You were on the bench for the trophy tie between the two clubs. How good a look did you get at them that night?
That's kind of what we based a lot of our pre-match stuff off. Looking obviously their shape and things like that, but yeah, I don't think you can take exactly the same kind of game plan from themselves and maybe us as well, obviously with a lot smaller crowd and not quite the hostility that will be maybe in the league, but yes, it's nice to have got a look at them in previous weeks, and I'm sure they'll be saying the same thing, but I think it will be a slightly different contest come Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, no Alfie May for them, for starters, in the trophy game. How much can you actually learn when you're sitting on the bench? Because, managers always say the view from there isn't great, so I guess it's the same for subs, is it? Yeah,
I'd say I definitely have a better view when I'm playing, but yeah, from the side it's hard to tell. You can't really gauge too much, and obviously you get more into the game rather than kind of looking at specific things as well when you're on the bench, because you just want the boys to win and play well, so it's not as tactical. I'd say you're more kind of in the fourth official's ear and trying to just get things going.
So actually the learning comes from watching it back on the video then?
Yeah, I'd say so, especially when you're on the bench. I think specific players in different positions, maybe midfielders, might take more detail into it, but I think as goalkeepers the game pretty similar. The only things you really look at early on is the shape and how they're pressing and things like that, and then after that it's kind of just flows into higher areas of the pitch.
You did have a couple of games where Lewis Thomas obviously had to stand in for you and you were on the bench. Obviously there was a fitness problem there. Is that all sorted out? You're back to 100%? Yeah, all good now, all back to 100%. It was just a slight hamstring problem that was just not quite good enough to play, but yeah, more than obviously happy to be on the bench, and Tomo did really well in those games. Obviously got man of the match against Barnsley, so yeah, whenever he does play, you know what you get from him. You get 100%, and more often than not you get very good performances from him. And the atmosphere, you've already mentioned that sort of the trophy game had a smaller crowd than will be expected this weekend. How much does that just add to the occasion and I suppose crank up the pressure, and you've got to think clearly through that, haven't you? Yeah, it will definitely be a lot different, but there's a couple of things that obviously will stick in our minds. I think their fans got very excited over that win the other day, so they've got to come in now in the league, and obviously they'll be wanting to do the same thing, but I think that's definitely in the back of a couple of boys' minds. So yeah, there's definitely an added incentive into it.